So this week I'm focusing on one of the readings that we have already initially explored. Is the reading that is the chapter that is titled "Don't Take Craster Bait." And I have to tell you, I had a hard time understanding the title of the chapter, but perhaps as we explore it today, we might be able to figure out what is it that Terry Ross really wanted to do with this. But beyond that, discovering what's the meaning of the title, what I would really like to do with you today is to think of ways in which you will be able to explore your chosen site, tribal, community, or issue for that final paper this semester. So that's the aim of this session this week. And that's how I'm going to be approaching this reading. The reading is basically a love story of Terry Ross in her living in one of these electronic tribes or virtual communities that we are so exploring in this module. I think what I want us to do, what I think is going to be interesting for this semester, is to explore how human interaction is actually happening in these different virtual spaces that we know as the different corners of the digital realm. And so it's human interaction. And some of the things that we have been exploring in the initial readings is, or one of the main ideas that I think I hope you have brought home with you, and it is the idea that the interaction that happens in these virtual spaces is no different in nature and in its characteristics than any other physical, quote-unquote, real interaction that we can see or participate in the non-digital world. The same characteristics should be present, and then the ways in which we identify, apply, and negotiate rules should be the same. So let's keep this in mind as our intention. So first, we would like to, when we explore a website or a virtual community, we would like to identify the characteristics of the interaction, our people interacting, and the nature of this interaction. Is this intense? Is this casual? Is this highly regulated? Is this tangential or even casual? What are the rules that are at play? Is this a highly controlled, structured, rigid environment, or is this a more of a loose environment in which many things go? And what are the consequences of rigidity or a loose use of rules in different realms? Does rigidity leads to stability and continuance or not? And very importantly, we should be vigilant or interested in seeing how these rules are set and then negotiated. Because the one thing that we know about human interaction, based on the readings of Bloom and then the ethnographic explorations of interaction using symbols and hence symbolic interactionism, is that rules are not just set, but they are constantly negotiated. So let's recap a little bit of symbolic interactionism that it's been used by anthropologists, certainly by sociologists, but also by anthropologists in a very successful way to explore human communities. Let me take this out of the way. We use ideas that have been given to us to interpret the space in which we live. So, for example, we have an understanding of what is my role as an instructor. You have an understanding what is your role as a student. We haven't actually had any negotiation that I remember. Nonetheless, we interact based on those rules. But as we engage, you and I, in this virtual space, we're negotiating those rules as to What is it that you expect from me, and what is it that I expect from you? And that is something that actually kind of changes as we move along. A society, according to certain theoretical frameworks, some of which I am familiar with and use and like for my own interpretations of the different things that I study, is comprised of structures and then agency. Structures, normally we talked about rules and resources available, and then agency is how individuals interact with those rules and with those resources. In symbolic interactionism, the emphasis and the interest is placed on those micro experiences of individuals as the building block of any larger, smaller, mid-sized social structure or society. And you think of it, this is a very provocative idea. So societies and institutions are nothing but intellectual constructions of our sociological imagination. But in reality, the one thing that we have is you listening to this recording as part of a micro interaction as to how you experience me, how you experienced you, or imagined you as I'm recording this. Those are micro experiences, are the basic constitutive elements of any larger institution or society. So the university is nothing but our interactions, these micro experiences of individuals. I like the emphasis. I wouldn't think that that's the only thing, but for the exploration we want to do of virtual spaces, I think it applies. We actively respond to our context because we use a number of elements to respond to those contexts and to navigate through those contexts. We use symbols, we use a sense of the self, and then with symbols and the sense of self, we engage in those interactions. And those are the three elements that we should be exploring and discovering as we explore any virtual realm. So symbols is from the words, the labels, the concepts that we use. And labels is a big one here. If you're a student, that's a label that I'm applying to you, and you might be comfortable with it or not, and even your sense of what is a student might be different from my sense of what is a student. We haven't talked about it, right? But we're operating on the basis that we both have a common understanding on it. So you have your understanding of self, who you are, what you do, your beliefs, just like as I do have my understanding of self. But then when I'm posting these lectures, you might have a completely different view of who I am when your view is compared to my view of who I am. Just recently had this interaction that was interesting as to my understanding of what was a tribe in the traditional sense. And I think from my point of view that was misinterpreted as me understanding anything that's tribal as being primitive. And perhaps this came from an ill-explained segment of my presentation. But then again, myself and the perception of who I am, it's out there for the grabs, and it's subject to interpretation. And it can, or maybe even my own understanding of who I am might be wrong, might be not what people see of me. And maybe I'm not even aware that the way I'm being perceived and the consequences of my actions and my words actually mean something specific to other people. So it's a negotiation, and in that negotiation we really find the roles of that we're playing in that specific context. What matters here is that we explored and we scrutinize this interaction based on symbols and understandings of self. A symbol, it's those prevailing elements and the meanings of those elements that people use to navigate. And then the self in a digital realm will come down to this specific question: do I fit in? What does it take for me to be able to be part of this group? Do I want to be part of this group? And then the interaction, it's also fundamentally anchored in the understanding of the roles of the others, and how am I supposed to deal with those roles and with the author.